online on some. I can't remember. I have to look that up where I got here.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. And so this is actually part 3 of our 4-part series, and I'm so excited. So thanks again, Daniel, for coming back, and we had a really epic session last time with Harris and Owen, and I know this one will be just as awesome. Daniel will talk about open space agility and explain a little bit about what that means for your organization. And of course, this is actually part of a regular thing that we have where we do monthly events, and this is a little side thing. So we'll be talking about what else we're going to do on the side. We do all of this as volunteers, and we've grown from like 4 people 3 years ago to like 12 people now. So we are so excited to have you all here. And what's most exciting, at least for me and us as a Coaching Agile Journeys co-host, is that we see the same people joining time after time, which tells us I think we're hitting the mark. If you have any feedback for us, and you'll see us on the calls, here are our faces. Just look for us. And we do have a brand new podcast. It's available on all the common podcast platforms and on our website, of course. So we'd love if you check that out. And if we made a difference in your life, please consider supporting our work, because we do all this on our own time and money. So we can keep them free for anyone, and we don't do any advertising or take any money. The whole purpose, I just want to touch on this briefly, and I know that Daniel will touch on it a little bit as we close, but the purpose for this series is really to help you understand what the Open Leadership Symposium is all about. So we'll talk a little bit about open leadership, and Daniel will go into that, and then at the end we'll close it out with any questions you have about open leadership, open space agility, and the things that we're doing around that. So this symposium is happening very first time in Boston, May 14th and 15th, and so super hope that you can join us there. But listen to our series, you'll get a little sense of what we're talking about when we say open leadership and open space agility especially. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Daniel. You're muted though, Daniel.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the first thing I said is, welcome to each of you. It's so great to see each of you here. And the second thing I have to say is that I hope to deliver as much content and valuable content as I possibly can in the next 40 or so minutes, 45. And the third thing I want to say is that all questions are content during this call. They are not interruptions. There's no parking lot. There won't be any of that. I'm going to directly address your question. If you have a question, you can signal, I guess, in the chat, or you can hold your hand up like this. And if I don't see it, then Heidi or one of the others, like Isaac, will pick up on it, and we'll just answer your question, right? So show of hands, how many people have taken a peek at the open space agility large picture and kind of clicked around in there? Show of hands. Okay, some, but not all. Okay. And how many people have ever experienced an open space event in an organization? Show of hands. Oh, there's only a few hands going up. Wait, but wait, there's overflow. Maybe the second half of the gallery. Show of hands. Oh, the galleries. Oh, it's all these are the people that don't have pictures. They just have names. Oh, but Irma has a name and a picture. That's good. Okay, so some people have done this, and some haven't. Philippe has. Okay, so there's some things I want to teach you, and I'm going to teach them really fast. Okay, so here's why you care about this conversation. So if none of this resonates with you, then it's unlikely you will enjoy this presentation. So this is a kind of filter. So like, just in case you're wasting your time, you can find out right now. Here's the first thing. Agile doesn't work without engaged people. It doesn't work without engaged people. If you believe this, then you're off to a great start with this presentation. If you're dubious, I'm not going to try to sell you anything. And you can, feel free to do what you want to do after this next one. So here's the first thing. Agile doesn't work without engaged people. Making a decision is very engaging. So if we want to engage people, we need to put them on some decisions. Otherwise, they might disengage, because another way of saying it is not making decisions is very disengaging. Is that fair? Yeah? Okay, and there's some people with background noise, it's a good idea to mute if you have kids or a dog or a cat. You know, the cats and dogs and kids are welcome here, but they should be seen and not heard. Okay? Okay. Is you still with me now? All right, so making a decision is engaging, and invitations generate a decision, okay? So invitation is the key to making Agile work, because Agile doesn't work without engaged people, and invitations generate decisions, and decisions generate engagement. That's the whole premise of open space agility. Is there anybody that wants to leave? Okay, good. All right, so here's the summary. Invitation leads to decision-making, and decision-making leads to engagement, and engagement is good. Therefore, invitation is good. That's it. So you were all invited today to come to this. Did anyone force you or twist your arm or make you feel guilty about not being here, any of that? No, no, no. You're just all here voluntarily of your own free will, right? Well, in theory. We can't know for sure, but we can assume that you're here because you want to be here. So that tends to be engaging because you show up, right? So here's the deal. The big picture looks like this. Can everybody see that? All right, so there's two big green circles in there. This is an all-hands meeting called the first open space meeting. This is a second open space meeting, 45 to 90 days apart. It says 100 days, but we learned that 45 to 90 is what actually is common practice now. Okay, so here's what happens. In the first meeting, people learn about open space. And in the second meeting, people show up with an agenda because they already know open space. Okay, so here's what they do. They game the meeting. They actually game the meeting. They go to the first open space, and they go because the big boss invited them, him or her, invites them, quote, invites them, but everyone at lunch is like, yeah, it says I'm invited and I don't have to go, but I'm going. Aren't you going? Because Ann invited us, and there's no way I'm not going to be seen at that meeting. So I'm going. Okay, that's the first meeting. The second meeting, here's what happens. In the middle between the two open spaces, as long as the leader signals that there's a lot of openness and they do everything they said they were going to do in the first open space, afterwards, people start getting together at lunch and talking about how they're going to play the next open space. So you're going to hear like certain thought leaders in the Agile community will say, oh, open space, you know, it's a good idea, but it's too easily gamed. No, that's not a bug. That's a feature, okay? People show up planning for what they want the meeting to be at that second meeting, okay? So open space agility is about basically taking advantage of human nature, okay? And human nature goes like this. People do what they're willing to do. They associate with who they're willing to associate with, and most people are eager to do great work. So open space agility helps leaders create the conditions where people can do great work together. Leaders signal certain things in the first open space meeting. That's all described over here on the left margin. Then the people go through a period of experimentation with Agile practices. And there's direct experience, there's experimentation, we play a game. Leaderships tell stories. Emergent leadership shows up, and there's a lot of organizational learning. That's all in the body of the diagram. And then when they get to about the middle part, the smart ones start thinking, hey, how are we going to play the second meeting? We want an 18-month roadmap. We don't have one yet. How about we try to get one in that second open space meeting? And that's exactly what the people do. So this whole idea that open space can be gamed is a feature. We're taking advantage of this fact with the open space agility architecture, right? So the big idea is between these two red pillars, there's 90 days or so of experimentation. There's an opening meeting that's all hands. There's a closing meeting that's all hands. And this we call a chapter of learning or organizational learning, okay? So that's the basic idea with open space. Now I want to, or open space agility. Now I want to say one more thing and then take some questions. Well, I'm going to actually say 4 or 5 things. Experimentation, iteration, inspection, adaptation, right? Those are all core hallmark things of the Agile approach, right? So I have a question for you. Why don't we do them as part of the transformation process inspection? Why don't we inspect the process instead of just the work, is what I'm getting at. In other words, why do we not promote these 4 things as first-class objects at the highest level, at the enterprise level? Iteration, experimentation, adaptation, inspection. Okay, that's what we're doing with this. That's what this is, okay? So we're not going to do transformation for the rest of our lives until further notice. No, we're going to do it for 90 days and everybody gets a hearing to discuss what they liked and what they didn't like. Oh, here's the 5th thing, retrospection. How about an enterprise-wide retrospection on how the Agile transformation's going? How about that for a concept? Right, there's the work, and then there's the work that organizes the work, right, the transformation. So we do this in small pieces. Why? Because people will agree to do things in small pieces, but people will not agree to dedicate the rest of their lives to this. No, they want to inspect it because that's the Agile way. So with that, I want to pause long enough to take a question or 2 from anybody who has one, just in case. So just put your hand up against the screen like this or type into the chat, whatever you like. Oh, Paul kind of faked me out. He went like this and then he just combed his hair. Okay, Philip Bergeon.
Hello. Yes, I have a question. Hello. I have a question regarding scale of Agile scale. Do you combine something with, I guess, maybe at the beginning, or what is, how do you combine those 2 parts? Yeah,
so what we're going to do is this can be done at a level of like the department or division, or it can be done across the whole enterprise. If it's done across the whole enterprise, or even whatever level of scale it's at, the content is experiments with Agile practices. That's what this says right here. Okay, so in this meeting, what we do is we tell the people, we're going to experiment with Agile practices. We're going to use maybe the existing framework we're using now. It might be SAFe, it might be Scrum at Scale, it might be some other framework. But what we do better darn well align with the manifesto, or we're not doing any of that in the next 90 days, right? We're going to stick to the manifesto. Why? Because it's a secret. Here's a secret about the manifesto. It actually works. It actually works. That's why we're going to use the manifesto. So whatever you're doing now, as long as you're sticking with the manifesto, you're good. If you're not using a framework, pick one that honors the manifesto and you're still good. But this is not a framework for Agile transformation. The open space agility is an engagement model. You use it with the framework you currently have, the framework that's silent on employee engagement, because they all are. Did I mention that yet? They have nothing to say. They have none of the frameworks say this. None of them. That is a crime of the first order. Because the first value of the Agile Manifesto is people over process. So come on. Guess why that's true? Okay. So to answer your question, Philippe, the OSA works with what you currently have. You use it for enterprise-wide transformation, and it works with any framework. It's not a framework. It's an engagement model. upon which you build an engagement plan. Because none of this Agile stuff's going to stick if the people aren't engaged. That's the idea. Does that help? Can I answer a follow-on question? We're good?
It's just one maybe question. What I notice in most of the organization is a lack of energy, dynamic. So if I want to try an open space, I'm not sure they are ready to go. So that's my threat. Yeah.
Well, for openers today, as we talk today, I'm teaching you this from the point of view that you have a willing leader, a willing sponsor. Okay. The whole subject of the willing versus the unwilling sponsor is it's a whole separate teaching. How to bring an unwilling leader into a willing state it's a whole other 1 hour talk. But to keep things simple, we're assuming that you've got a leader who wants to do this, right? And what's this really about? This is really about open leadership, right? So one definition of open leadership is I accept the best idea regardless of its source in pursuit of more improvement, right? So open leadership is open in the receiving and the sending, right? The receiving of ideas and also in communication, right? So there's not going to be any transformation of anything without open leaders, open leadership, what we might call open patterns and practices. It's just not going to happen. So I just wrote an essay that I posted. You'll see it on Twitter. It's called Pressing Pause on Business Agility. And I'm arguing that we're heading into a train wreck of absolutely epic worldwide scope. It's going to make the mess in software agility look like child's play compared to what's about to happen. It's a total train wreck because we can't even do basic fundamental competent software agility, and now we're going to roll it out to the whole enterprise. This is a disaster, a total disaster waiting to happen. This is the way out. Short iterations of change based on whole group process. This dude right here, Productive Workplaces, this book, you can kind of see it at the bottom of the stack there. Productive Workplaces by Marvin Weisbord. He coined the term, whoops, he coined the phrase, get the whole system in the room. That's what we're doing, folks. We're getting the whole system in the room. And they don't have to show up unless they want to. Okay, so Paul. Oh, wait, Paul, yeah. No, Paul first, yeah.
I'm actually raising my hand now. So yeah. What I'm hearing you say is the Agile Manifesto contains an assumption that we are dealing with engaged leaders, but that is not necessarily true.
It's almost never true. Yeah. Most executives, their idea of engagement, and you're going to hear this from consultants who are in favor of push. They'll say, "Oh, we engage the leaders. Yeah, they fund everything. They authorize everything." Yeah, that's not engagement. Sorry, that's called budgeting. They're like, and then they go like this. Oh yeah, agility is great for engineering, but not for us. You know, we're busy with other things. So we're going to delegate it down 3 levels or something where it really doesn't matter. And the consultants are going to be running the show. Well, hey, guess what? Never outsource your core competency. That's a terrible idea. You need to be in charge of your own process. It's really folly to delegate to consultants. It's a terrible idea. What we want to do is engage the people we already have. Why? So we can save like 70% on our consulting spend. That's why. And get twice the results out of it as well. So you're going to get twice the results and it's going to cost you 70% less money. What's not to like about that? Oh, it's going to last also, which, you know, this other stuff doesn't last at all. It lasts until Elvis leaves the building. Right? The consultants. Once the consultants leave the building, that's it. The show's over. It just goes back to its previous state. And we've all seen this. So that's what this is. And, you know, what we want to do is we want to engage the leaders. We want them to do their leadership work in an agile way. We want them to do some agile practices. Why? Well, how about like this? So they have a clue about what they're hatching on the rest of the organization. That would be one reason. And there's many other reasons, you know, but that's the primary one. So Paul, did you have a follow-up comment or concern or question about that? Or are you good? Good for now? I'm
good. Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Is there someone else with a question or a concern or a suspicion or a real, I don't know what you might call it, a caution about what I'm saying?
Hey, Dan, we have a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
So this one is from Andrea Chow. I'm not sure if I pronounced your name right, Andrea. How do managers, especially middle managers, stay engaged during this process? OSA works based on top-level buy-in.
Yeah, so here's your, let's complicated answer, but I'm going to get right back down to the managers at the end, okay? So here's the story. We could do surface Agile, surface Scrum, and I define that as doing the practices like the retrospective, having a backlog, doing the daily stand-up, having a Kanban board, things like this. But here's what's true. The same people who made decisions yesterday make them today. That's what I call surface agility. Yeah, we have Kanban board, we have backlog, we have a stand-up, we do a retrospective, blah, blah, blah. But the same people who made decisions about the product in development of it yesterday still make those decisions today. That's surface Agile. So if you're going to do surface style Agile, there's loads of room for managers because none of the decision making has changed. It's only when the decision making gets changed that the people who are currently making decisions get nervous about their role. Because, like, pardon my French, but they just go like, oh shit, you know, they have their oh shit moment. You know, I used to plan and schedule and, you know, all that. Now I don't do that anymore. I used to make product decisions. Now I don't do that anymore. Nothing happened until I decided. Now things are happening whether I decide or not. Oh shit. Right? So through this process is a signal event. Okay, this meeting's a signal event. This meeting's a signal event. Everything that happens in the middle is a signal type event. What does it signal? It signals open leadership. That's what it signals. What's that mean? Well, we're going to find the best ideas and we're going to implement them. That's what that means. In pursuit of what? In pursuit of improvement, and specifically improvement in the flow of value out of this company into the hands of customers, right? Guess what the number one impediment is to most of the flow? It's the way decisions get made. So what we're going to do is we're going to put people in open space, and they're going to get the idea that we're shopping for good ideas, right? And guess who has those a lot of the time? Managers do. So managers, go ahead.
I just have a follow-up with that. So you go in, top-level buy-in from the most senior in the company, and let's assume that there's still a lot of that middle management and surface level decision making and so forth.
Yeah.
So what kind of buy-in do you have to get from the that lower layer of managers for this to work?
So you do need to get their consent. But what we do in OSA is we get their consent for 90 days, not for the rest of their career. And that's all the difference. So the basic concept is, if you want to get a yes from someone, ask for less. Ask for less. If you ask for too much, it's too easy to say no. And even a passive aggressive no can torpedo your Agile adoption. So what we're doing here is we're actually asking them to play along for 90 days. 90 days. Most managers will play along for 90 days. Where can managers go? They can become product people. They can become Scrum Masters. They can go back to dev. And not everyone can go back to dev because it doesn't pay as high as management pays, usually, right? So that's kind of a problem. But they can also work into, there'll be new roles that are created. Like at one company where I worked, They had one person handle 30 team members across several teams, and they were like the liaison and career coach and compliance connection to human resources for these people, their career path and all these kinds of things. They weren't their manager, they were their connection to compliance and HR and all of that sort of administration stuff around the career. Right. And while that was going on, we were also changing the policies about how people were performance rated to add more 360 peer review and more of this. You do it little by little, but there's four or five places managers can go. There's some managers who love to manage, but most people hate management. Most people are happy to get out of management. Why? Because you're constantly asking people to do things they don't want to do. And then you end up just telling them. So what good is that? In the end, we want passionate and responsible people. So the managers, to be clear, are a problem. And here's why. Gary Hamel wrote in his article in the Harvard Business Review, it appeared 3 or 4 years ago, the article that's entitled, First, Let's Fire All the Managers. Did anyone ever see that article? First, Let's Fire All the Managers was the title. Oh my God. And then he represented that those folks represented a 30% tax on business. And that if we just got rid of them, business would be more profitable. That's a terrible idea. Yes, some managers will go to other places. They will move. But they hold a lot of the cultural DNA. They know where everything is and how it works. And executives aren't subject to the culture. They help define it. And then the people who work in teams, you know, they don't really define the culture. They're subject to it. It's the managers who actually create the culture of the company. So it's really a terrible idea to devalue the people in those roles. What we need to do is devalue the role, not the people. And that's my summary statement to you, Andrea, on how to handle this. And in this event, open space here and open space here, signals that people matter. Because let me tell you something. A lot of people that are on this call have not been on inside an open space, inside an organization. But I want to tell you something. Once that genie comes out of the bottle, it's not going back in. Some of you are laughing, but you run an open space, hey, you're going to ignite a lot of energy, and you better be ready for that because a whole bunch of energy is going to be released into the work. So this is the last thing I want to say about Andrew's question. I work with the leadership group, which includes the top 20 or so formally authorized leaders and some of their direct reports, those managers, so 30 or 40 people. If you want to have an enterprise transformation, you must do the leadership preparation. If you don't do that, you're dead in the water. Don't even start. If you want to transform the org, transform the leadership team. Don't put a deadline on it either because they're kind of slow to move. I don't know if you noticed that. But if they're willing to work with you and you're willing to, they're willing to view you as a trusted advisor, you take them through important learning experiences where they learn that their prestige increases through the use of this open leadership principles and patterns. And once they're comfortable with that, now we can take it to the enterprise. Why? Because now we're all singing from one sheet of music about what's about to happen. If I report, say I report to Mark Sheffield. And Mark Sheffield is dragging his feet on the transformation, and he reports to Heidi, who runs a show. She's the CEO. And Mark's the head of product, and I report to him. If Mark's dragging his feet, I'm dragging my feet. I know Mark, and he sends me the signals. They're verbal, and a lot of them are nonverbal, and I know exactly where he stands, and I'm going to play the game with him. Why? Because none of the performance management stuff has changed. I'm still rated the same, and if Mark doesn't like me, my career catches a cold. So, hey, guess what? I'm playing the Mark game. I'm playing the Mark Sheffield game. Aren't you? So one leader with say 20 direct and indirect reports, oh my God, they can torpedo the whole thing. So we better darn well do this leadership preparation. So OSA focuses on the leadership first and then the enterprise. And we do it in gentle stages that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay, so can I take another question?
Yeah, there's another one in the chat that is what you just said is a great segue. This is from Tim. He says, let's say my organization has set aside a day and a half this week to try for the first time with very little advance notice. What are the top 3 ways we could sabotage it?
Could you repeat the question? I was mildly distracted for a minute.
That's
Say
okay.
it a different way.
Sure. His organization is going to set aside a day and a half for one of these events with very little notice. What are the top 3 ways that they can sabotage it?
Well, the number 1 way you can sabotage is by doing it with very little notice. All right. So there's a reason why this says 60 days and then 45 days, right? Because it's 45 days of prep and it's 2 weeks of letting that invitation socialize. You need at least 2 weeks to get that invitation out there. People are going to talk about it. They're going to click the links on open space. They're going to learn. And you definitely do not want to send it out there on short notice. Here's another way to totally like torpedo the success of this. Make an argument that the consultants are very expensive, so we should not invite them. Only the people that are full-timers should be invited. We're not going to invite the consultants because, after all, we're paying them a lot of money. That's a beautiful way to kill it. Can you see why?
Well, yeah, in Philippe's company, nobody would show up.
There you go.
All consultants.
Yeah, it's all consultants. It creates like an us-them, where a lot of times the consultants are, I mean, look, I've been a developer. I have a computer science degree. I have software patents. And I can tell you something. In my day, I wrote a lot of career secure code. A lot of career secure code. Why? Because I had 3 kids and a mortgage to pay. And, you know, hey, baby needs shoes. So I wrote some code nobody could understand. Who's ever done that on purpose? Everyone. Yeah, we all have. Except when the economy gets better, then you write clean code, right? You know, but when the economy's not doing good, you write career secure code. So, you know, you want those consultants to write a whole bunch of really bad code. Don't invite them to the open space. That's another reason. So I'm making a little joke here, but it's not really a joke. It's kind of true. Furthermore, don't you want to hear from the consultants who have been here for 4 months, 6 months, or whatever? Like, what's their opinion of what we're doing here? What if they make a throat clearing sound and kind of mention some things that nobody's talking about, but everybody knows? Don't you want those people in the room? Yeah, you sure do. So that's a great way to kill it too. Another good way to kill it would be to schedule something else, either the day of the event or the day after. In one company, the fellow who ran product had his annual offsite the very next day after the second open space. So we did one open space. He kind of got the lay of the land. And then when we scheduled the second open space, he scheduled his annual offsite to be the next day. That put a lot of pressure on all the product people to prepare for his offsite. They couldn't really go. They had to choose where they're going to go to one or the other. That's another way to kill it. So I could keep going on ways to kill it. You want me to keep going? All right, here's a great way to kill it. Have the sponsor say yes to all of your requests. You know, yes, they will tell them there's going to be another open space. Yes, they'll say they're going to work on the proceedings with everybody. Yes, they're going to say they're going to work with the emergent leaders. And then have them not do any of that. That will completely torpedo any success that was possible. Yeah. So, I mean, I could just go on and on about some things that are easy way to kill this. Can I take another question?
Yes, we have another one from Isaac. Can we influence adoption of open space when we are buried in an org without access to leadership?
Well, this is a tough one, right? So let's talk about local optimizations, okay? Local optimizations are improvements you can make locally that don't make a bit of difference to the whole system, okay? It's just a local improvement. So, you know, like you can work with if you're a Scrum Master and you Scrum Master a couple of teams, yeah, you can make some great improvement with those teams. but it's only within the confines of, you know, that their local space. And then they're still subject to the constraints and problems and boundaries, spoken and unspoken, in the whole org, right? Which includes, of course, the way decisions get made. So typically what happens is teams get hamstrung or tied up waiting on decisions from higher ups because they're not letting go of the control of the decision making, that kind of thing. Okay. Coaching is mostly a local act, but you need to think like globally and in the large. If you don't have access to the executive leaders, you're not going to get any lasting improvement. It's not going to happen. So you've got to get access to them. And I told you before that we're assuming a willing sponsor with a high enough level of authorization. The sponsor, the sponsor of the open space up here in the diagram, they need to be way up there in their authorization level. Why? Because if they are, the meeting is important. And if they're not way up there, it's not. That's why. Because it turns out that authority and authorization is extremely important in this method. So if you can't get access to top leadership, well, then get access as high as you possibly can. Like you might have 7 or 8 teams working on one backlog with one product owner. You might be doing something like large-scale Scrum, right, which has one product owner for every 7 or 8 teams. Do it at that level then. There's still 70 people in the situation with that many teams. Do it at that level and get the highest authorized person you possibly can. And then work sort of higher than your local level now, so, right? So you were working with a couple of teams, you're doing good work, that's great. Can't get access to the top leadership, but you can get 100 people in the room who are building related products, and you can get the top person in that division or department to convene everybody. That's called progress, and that's what you should take a shot at. I hope that helps. Can I answer a follow-up question to that question? Is there something further I can say about this topic? We're good? Good for now? Okay. Are there other questions?
Dan, this is Ann. I have one sort of a follow-up to that. I'm hearing a parallel to that and the idea of scaling Scrum, where start with one Scrum team, do that well and scale that. Is that what you're saying? Is that sort of a parallel to that same idea? So start, if you can't get at the top levels to do the open space, do it where you can and start small and do that well and then scale.
Yes, Ann, that's a very good idea, and I want to add to this thing that you're mentioning here now, okay? So the reason why you don't get access to top leadership, here's the reason. They are not willing. If they were willing, then you could talk to them, you could get some time with them, right? They would talk with you, but they're not willing, so you're not going to get access to them. All right, so here's the idea. Yes, work with a pilot type thing, like in Scrum at Scale, it's called a reference model. You build a small little scale thing with 6 or 7 teams, get that working well, and then you roll it out to the enterprise. It's like a pilot, right? But here's the key with the pilot, right? This is a really interesting thing. It goes back to this. This invitation idea goes back to this. With pilots, we would never do a pilot with unwilling people. That would be called foolishness or folly. It would be unwise, right? And we all know why. I mean, why would we do a pilot with willing teams? To take the risk out of it, that's why. To reduce the risk and to increase the chances of success. So what we're doing with OSA is we're taking that idea and we're doing it at scale. Instead of just working with the willing pilot people, let's invite everyone to this meeting and let's see who shows up, and let's find out who the willing people are, and let's work with them. So Ann, I totally agree with you. But I'm with an at-scale pilot with 7 or 8, 9 teams. I want 7, 8, 9 willing teams. Okay. Now I'm going to give everyone some homework, and I hope that you do it. And here's what the homework is. I want everyone to issue at least one invitation today to someone. Now, an invitation, if you look it up in the dictionary, it's an offer to go somewhere or do something. Now, invitations get in people's head. So when you invite people, they're going to think about it. And a lot of times we have invitations that aren't formed very well. So people don't understand them, so it's hard for them to say yes. Have you ever been invited to something and you're not sure what it means or what I'm being invited into, and you're like, hey, I don't know about that. I don't know whether to give you a yes or no or a maybe on that. I might not ever answer you because it's so vague, I don't know what to say. Ever have that feeling? I'm sure you have. So here's the 4 properties of a great invitation. A clear goal, clear rules, a clear way to track my progress. And then parenthetical phrase, you might say feedback right there. And then opt-in participation. Okay? So what I'm doing here is I'm showing you if these 4 elements are in your invitation, it's very easy for people to say yes or no to you. Now this looks clinical. Here, let me make it totally human for you, okay? You're all invited to my house for dinner a week from Thursday. We are going to experience good food, fine wine, and even finer conversation. You can invite a friend with you, like we have a big dining room, and you can expect 16 people to be there. The first, 8 or 9 of you that respond to the invite are in. And then if there's any other seats that are left, you have to let me know by this Thursday. We're going to start around 6:30. We'll end around 10:30. And I certainly hope you take me up on it. And that's it. So what's the goal? What was the goal of the dinner? What was one goal of the dinner?
Conversation.
Yeah.
Wine.
Yep. And then what are some of the rules in blue? The rules.
The time.
6 p.m.
Yeah, 6 p.m.
You can invite one person.
Yeah, you can invite one person, which has an authority tag on it, right? You're authorized to bring someone to my house. I'm inviting you to invite someone, right? There's other rules, so you can think about in the conversation what they were, right? How are we going to track progress in green, progress tracking?
Get back to me by Thursday.
Yep, that's one way. Yep. When we get there and we're in the dinner, how will we experience progress?
Talk to each other. We'll talk to each other and sit at the table.
Right, we're going to have conversation. And what else are we going to have?
Until the wine run out.
Until the wine runs out and the food runs out. I didn't mention how many courses and how many wines. I should have mentioned that, but I should have said like five courses and 6 different wines. You got the idea? And then it's all opt-in, right? So I want you to invite someone to go do something or go somewhere and make sure these 4 things are in your invitation. This is exactly what we do when we work with the leaders over here, and we teach them how to do the invitation. We teach them these things in blue. When we teach them that 3rd thing in blue about the invitation, we teach them about what a good, easy to understand invitation has inside of it. Okay, so what we're doing is we're teaching the leaders how to mix in invitation with their delegations. Okay, now I want to take a question, and then I want to talk about delegation for a minute. So is there another question I can handle?
We don't have anything in the chat, but boy, is there a lot of conversation out there. Anybody from the audience have a question?
It's okay. It's okay if you don't have a question. I can just keep piling on. So there's one last thing I want to leave you with, because we're like almost at 12:45. I want to kind of come in for a smooth landing. So I don't want to introduce too many new topics, but I want to introduce this topic, delegation. I want to point something out to you. Around the world, worldwide, in these Agile adoptions, here's what's going on. Like for the Scrum product owner, for example, the executives are delegating responsibility to the product owner, but without authority to make decisions that they need to do their job. So it's the delegation of responsibility without authority. It's going on worldwide in almost everywhere. So when you think about delegation, I want you to think about two things: the delegation of responsibility and the delegation of authority, because they both have to be in the delegation for it to be good. Okay, so delegation is one thing, invitation's another. Now let's discuss invitation over delegation. Say you're a really good delegator and you're good at delegating responsibility and authority, and you know how to do that very clearly. And let's say that I report to you and I'm delegated a task, and you tell me if you need anything, just send them to me. And that's what I do. When people give me any, pardon my French, if they give me any crap, I send them to Ann Bria. And Ann Bria straightens them out because she's got the authority and she authorized me. That's on a good day how things are supposed to work. But that's not how things work around the world. So what happens around the world is we delegate responsibility without authority, and then, we're expected to say yes to that. That's a recipe for massive levels of disengagement. Now, if you invite me as a volunteer to do some piece of work, I'm going to make sure that the authority is actually part of the deal, or I'm not going to say yes. Right? Because I don't have to say yes to an invitation, do I? I can say no, and I can say why. I say I really like to, but I don't think I have enough authorization to actually do this job. So I would need this, this, and this from you. Then I'd say, then I could say yes to it. So invitation opens up that conversation where delegation doesn't. So delegation is inferior in many ways to invitation. Delegation is inferior to invitation because, and here's the primary thing I want you to write down. Invitation generates massive amounts of feedback in a way delegation cannot. And in a complex world, or even a chaotic world, good decisions run on frequent feedback. If you're in a complicated space and you're not getting frequent feedback, you're making bad decisions. There's just no two ways around that. So feedback is essential. Invitation generates massive amounts of feedback. That's what we're doing with this. We're generating massive amounts of feedback through this OSA frame, this OSA template, okay? So when the sponsor says, hey, listen, if you like this meeting, we're doing it again in 90 days. Hey, guess what? That's going to generate a boatload of feedback for making good decisions. So I want you to go to your leaders, and here's what I want you to tell them. Before we spend another $4.7 million, how about we gauge the willingness of the organization to actually do this? And why don't we enlist the people in the creation of the story instead of making them subject to it? Why don't we sort of invite them to be authors, right? Within the constraints of this, the Agile Manifesto. And just release people into that space and see what they do. The results might surprise you. Save 70% on your consulting spend, create something that actually lasts, and get results twice as fast that are twice as good. I just got a call from somebody who I worked for in California. I worked for her in April, and she told me that a year later, the effects of that open space are still resonating through their company. So I'm confused about why Agile isn't all about open space. And, you know, the symposium coming up in May, it's called the Open Leadership Symposium. It might as well be called the Open Space Symposium, because open space is core to any leadership that's open. There's just no two ways around it. So I hope to see you at the event. The URL is openleadershipnetwork.com, and I think Heidi, you know, explained all that to you already. And I understand that she had to leave for a while. She had to go away a little bit early, and that Isaac and the others, Jeff, are, you know, we're kind of running things from here. So I'm going to quiet down now. And if we can take another question or two, great. We're 10 minutes out, but I want to just be sure that I'm leaving a space for a smooth end of the end. Okay?
Sure. We have one more question in the chat, Daniel. This is from Arturo Moreno.
Okay.
So much of Agile conversations revolve around software development organizations or shops. How have the experiences, especially with OSA, been different with large IT orgs?
Well, in large IT orgs, people are afraid. So usually they have a status report, and they're always 90% done. And you can look this up online. It's called the 90% syndrome. It's in the PMI project management cultural space. The 90% syndrome. People are always 90% done. So they're afraid to tell the truth. There's also something called the Liars Club. So go look up Project Management Liars Club, Project Management 90% Syndrome. The 90% Syndrome and the Liars Club are in large organizations. So in the Liars Club, I know that you know that this project will never see the light of day by September. Never, never, ever. And you know that I know that you know that I know. And neither one of us is saying a damn thing. Because the first one to say something loses. So until it's opened up, no truth-telling occurs. Why? Because it's career suicide. That's why. Okay? So I'm not saying a damn thing. Are you, pardon my French, are you? No, you're not going to say anything either. Why? Because we could get fired for saying something, but you probably won't get fired for saying nothing. So I'm saying nothing because I don't want to be fired. All right? So in large orgs, again, you've got to work with the leadership team and teach them about how they can take up all the air in the room with their high authorization. And we take them through experiments, and we take them through activities. So for example, in the Inviting Leadership book, in this book that Mark and I wrote, there's Appendix B, there's something called Authority Circle. I will send that to the Coaching Agile Journeys people, and they can distribute it out, okay, to everyone who's on this call. That exercise teaches leaders that their prestige increases when they open up a little space, okay? Leaders also need to understand that they are giving up nothing by answering questions with the response, I don't know, or I'm not sure, right? So we teach them how to do these things and then open space for other people to say they're not sure. Okay, and now we've got something. So the summary thing I want to say here is that software development, complex product development, anything that's complicated is an exercise in what I call group understanding or group cognition. So through the use of protocols and the use of patterns and practices, we are going to create a kind of container where the truth can come out. Okay, so we create a space where it's okay to tell the truth, and we teach leaders how to create that space, and then we create it with them, and then we bring the people in to tell the truth. So in large orgs, people are afraid. To make them unafraid, they have to feel they're safe to tell the truth. And that's a job for us in terms of being a tutor and a guidance counselor and a mentor to the leaders. So we have to teach them how to create these spaces. And that's what we do with the Authority Circle and some of the other activities that we have in the book.
I think Jenny had a follow-up question to that, Daniel. Do you discuss flat hierarchical command and control when you're talking to leadership?
Yeah, I want to just quickly address Paul Uhas's question, can we call bullshit? It says in the chat. And Paul, the answer to that is yes, you can call bullshit. Okay. So the next thing about the hierarchy, there's a hierarchy right here, right now. In this group, there's a hierarchy, right? So there's me, I'm the guest speaker. The hosts have authorized me. The hosts are running the show here. I'm here because they say so. I have no authority without them authorizing me to be your teacher for a few minutes, okay? So hierarchy gets a very bad rap. If you look it up inside the dictionary for homework, I want you to look up hierarchy in the dictionary. It means classification, grouping, and sort of categorization. Okay, so we're all wrapped up around the axle on hierarchy being a categorization of authority, but hierarchy is used in natural science, like taxonomy is a hierarchy, right? There's genus and so forth and so on, species and so on, right? So there's the, characterization. There's a hierarchy, all right. There's a formal one that we're all railing against, but there's also an informal one that's always taking place and exists right now. So think a lot about that as you go about your business and realize that human beings are connecting through their levels of authorization, and they're instantly forming authority structures that are in fact hierarchies. There's one that's existing right here, right now in our group. So what I'm trying to do is de-weaponize the idea of hierarchy. Hierarchy isn't a bad thing. It's what goes on around it that can be bad, right? But hierarchy brings order to things that are chaotic, and you need some of that. So that's where I am.
Okay, well, I think we should probably wind it up now. Daniel, this has been the fastest hour I've seen in a long time. Thank you so much for all of your insight and allowing everybody to participate today, or inviting us to participate, I should say. So I want to remind everyone we will be finishing up our leadership series, our open space leadership series on April 22nd with Niels Flaging, talking about open approaches for very fast organizational transformation. So we hope to see you all there. Follow us on Twitter. We will have the recording posted onto our website, coachingagilejourneys.com. We will have this conversation along with all of our other past conversations available for your listening and viewing pleasure. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks
Bye.
so much, Dan. Appreciate it so much. Bye, everybody.